you write descriptions that truly immerse readers and don't overdo it or underdo it?
That's the topic of our video today.
I have 7 essential tips to share that will enhance your descriptive writing.
Hi, I'm Rose, the book designer at Alkira Publishing.
And I'm Talia, the managing editor at Alkira Publishing.
And this is Loki, the lap warmer of Alkira Publishing. Crafting vivid descriptions is one of the keys to engaging your audience. So, what's your first tip on doing this?
Don't assume that readers know the setting. You need to provide clear descriptions to establish each scene, especially in unique or fantastical worlds. This grounds your audience in the story's environment.
So a description should paint a clear picture of the setting, but what about the mood of a scene?
Use a descriptive language to create the mood. For instance, describing a chill wind scattering autumn leaves evokes a sense of coldness and urgency, which enhances the scene's emotional impact.
We talked about showing rather than telling our stories in one of our other videos. So how does this relate to writing descriptions?
Okay, well, you need to incorporate all the senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. This multi-sensory approach enriches the reader's experience, making scenes more vivid and engaging, more immersive. It's showing rather than telling.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do I make sure I capture every single detail, or is there a limit and sometimes it's too much?
Yeah. Tip number 4 for writing descriptions is to be selective with details and avoid over-description. So choose the elements that are significant to the story or the character development and avoid unnecessary information that might overwhelm the reader.
So don't pretend you're Charlotte Bronte, because I feel like the classics have a lot of over-description in them. Would you agree? That was the style of Gothicism and Romanticism that was like incredibly descriptive writing. Sorry, that's my English extension too coming out.
Yeah, no, you can be descriptive without being unnecessarily so. Everything in those classics evokes the mood and the character. It's not just a description of a scene. So you can have a lot of description and it not seem too much. It's the excessive detail that's the issue.
I suppose that can become a subjective thing anyway.
It is selective, but it also depends on your genre.
Yeah.
Some genres permit more description, like literary writing, for instance, like the classics, whereas in a thriller, it just slows the pace.
Yeah.
So
it does depend on your genre. And it depends on the reader as well. You don't want to lose the reader's interest with like swaths of descriptive writing. So sometimes they just want you to get on with the story.
Well, they always want you to get on with the story, right? So if your descriptive passages move the story forward as part of that, then great, go for it. But often with new writers, they don't.
Yeah.
And then they slow the pace and become a stumbling block. And the reader wants to skip over them to find out what's happening next.
Right, so you don't need to describe every single step someone takes from their house to their car, getting the key out, putting it in the door, opening the door,
Exactly.
climbing in the car, when you could just say they got in the car.
Exactly. Yeah. The reader just wants you to get on with the story.
Yeah.
So while details are important, too much can just bog down the narrative. So you need to aim for a balance that provides clarity without overwhelming the reader.
So you want description, but not too much. So any tips on making those descriptions you do have in there more impactful?
Yes, you need to use specific language rather than vague terms. For instance, instead of saying a strange sound, describe it as an eerie wheezing sound.
Yeah.
Right?
Specificity.
Specificity, being specific, creates clearer images in the reader's mind.
And what about the placement of descriptions in the narrative? So do we have chunks of description at the start of the chapter, for instance, and then get into the action? Or, I mean, it's more of an organic process than that, I would imagine, if you're just writing.
Beginner writers often fall into the trap of putting all of their description in one chunk.
Right.
So I don't suggest that approach.
Yeah, that's how you lose readers' interest.
Yeah, it can easily lead into the descriptions becoming an info dump. And then readers just want to skip the description to get to the action.
Yeah.
So my 6th tip is to actually integrate descriptions with the action. So rather than isolating descriptive passages, you weave them into the character movements and dialogues to maintain the narrative flow and keep the readers engaged.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do we make sure that these descriptions relate well to the reader?
Well, you want the reader to see the world through the character's experience and emotions. So, for instance, an exquisite Van Gogh original, a 10-year-old boy might see it and describe it as a messy painting of sunflowers.
Yeah.
Whereas
so
the art critic would know exactly what it was.
Yeah. So that also is a tool for character development, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the way you're describing things because you're through their eyes.
That's right. So doing that creates insights into the characters and deepens the reader's connection to them. It's easy to do when you're writing in first person, right, or third person intimate point of view, but it's harder to do when you're writing from an omniscient point of view.
And for details on the different kinds of points of view you can use in your writing, see our video on point of view in our novel writing tips playlist. That will explain those words we just used.
So remember, vivid descriptions are a powerful tool in storytelling, but use them wisely to create immersive and engaging narratives.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's important with writing descriptions is that it fulfills more than one function. If you want to have like quite a large descriptive passage, then make sure that it also sets mood and adds to character, because then it's immersive.
I mean, a description should always set a mood, isn't that the point? Like,
Yes.
I mean, yes, at a certain point you have to describe what's happening, but in terms of a descriptive passage, I would think that would be used to set the mood.
Yes.
As well as describe what's happening.
Exactly. But like I could say, there were two lights and they sat on a old-fashioned love seat, and there was a carpet at their feet and they wore blah, 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 whatever, right? And that's descriptive because you're describing the setting. Exactly. And in there, we used a lot of to be verbs. There were. For more on that, you need to get this book, The Elements of Active Prose, because it will tell you that describing something in those words is really not the way to get a good description. There are actually like tips for the kind of language that you use to avoid telling rather than showing, and to show a scene through that person's eyes.
If you found this video helpful, let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified when we post a new video in this novel writing tips series, and see more of Loki the Lapwarmer.
Yes, so this series of novel writing tips is taking you all the way from the conception of your novel to publication and beyond.